For more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. Part 4, Almsgiving, Prayer and Fasting, Matthew 6, 1 through 18, which you'll need to read before or after watching this video. Our passage focuses on 3 spiritual practices, almsgiving, praying, and fasting, which are deeply rooted in Jewish tradition and were meant as acts of covenantal faithfulness. Jesus seems to believe that there will be central practices for his followers as well. Matthew's gospel assumes their importance, but calls for purified motives, urging believers to act for God's eyes alone. In contrast, we note that some Jewish leaders seem to have had the wrong motives for performing these acts. Perhaps sometimes we do too. The challenge to leadership we find here is timeless. Any religious system can fall prey to ego, performance, and hypocrisy. Jesus calls leaders and all believers into humble, hidden holiness. For this section, I'm going to bring in an extra panelist, E.P. Sanders. E.P. Sanders, Ed Pear Sanders, 1937 to 2022, was a groundbreaking New Testament scholar best known for reshaping modern understandings of Second Temple Judaism and the Apostle Paul. In his influential book, Paul and Palestinian Judaism, published in 1977, Sanders challenged the traditional Christian view that Judaism was a religion of legalism and works righteousness. Instead, he described it as a system of covenantal nomism, which is about a relationship with grace in which obedience to the Torah is a way of responding to God's prior election, mercy, and grace. His work helped correct long-standing misconceptions and promoted a more accurate, more respectful interfaith dialogue between Christians and Jews. Below are some guiding questions which we will let our panelists speak to. Guiding questions. Number 1, what place did these 3 practices have in Second Temple Judaism? Number 2, what role does Matthew want them to play in the Christian community? Number 3, what does this passage reveal about leadership then and now? E.P. Sanders. Second Temple Judaism. Sanders strongly emphasized that Judaism was not a legalistic religion of self-righteousness, but a covenantal system of grace. Almsgiving, prayer, and fasting were central to Jewish piety, deeply woven into temple worship, synagogue life, and personal devotion, not as a way of earning salvation, but as a way of expressing faithfulness to God. Matthew's message. E.P. Sanders would caution against reading Jesus' critique as a blanket condemnation of Jewish practice. Instead, Matthew critiques performative religion, something Sanders would say applies to human nature across time. These practices are assumed to be good, but must be done with authentic devotion rather than public applause. On leadership. Sanders might not speak directly to leadership as much as to patterns of human religiosity. However, he would remind readers that public religious figures in any tradition are always at risk of corrupting good practices into something performative. The issue is not Jewish leadership, but human hypocrisy. John Wesley, on Matthew's message. For Wesley, this section is about purity of heart. He believed that true holiness begins inwardly and then flows outward. Giving, praying, and fasting are means of grace, but only when done in sincerity and love. On leadership. He would challenge Christian leaders, especially Methodist preachers, to beware of seeking praise and to instead live with singleness of eye, that is, focused devotion. Leaders should model secret holiness, not public religion. Amy Jill Levine. On Second Temple Judaism, she would stress that Jesus is speaking from within Judaism, not against it. Almsgiving, prayer, and fasting were all biblically mandated and communally respected. They were a part of being in a right relationship with God and with one's neighbor. On Matthew's message, she would highlight the danger of Christian anti-Judaism in interpreting this passage. Jesus is critiquing hypocrisy, not Judaism. Matthew's concern is interiorizing piety, which is a broader spiritual concern, not a dismissal of Jewish practice. John Howard Yoder. On leadership, Yoder would see this passage as a direct rebuke to religious power seeking. Leaders are called to renounce spectacle and embrace hiddenness and vulnerability as they imitate Jesus. Discussion questions for reflection and group dialogue. Question 4. Which of these practices, almsgiving, prayer, fasting, do you find most meaningful in your life? Which do you find hardest to do with a pure heart? Number 5. Why do you think Jesus assumes his followers will practice these things? What does it say about their continual value? Number 6. What are some ways spiritual practices can become performative or ego-driven today? Among church leadership, on social media, or in your own life? Number 7. Matthew says your Father who sees in secret will reward you. What kind of reward do you think Jesus means here? Number 8. How can we cultivate spiritual disciplines that are both private and transformative, not just check boxes, but real pathways to grace? Number 9. How does your understanding of the Jewish roots of these practices change the way you hear Jesus' teachings? Number 10. What might this passage say to Christian leaders today? How can they model humility and avoid the temptation to be seen as something amazing?